and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer, and this is
John C. Myers.
And we're a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in popular and not so popular franchises. And today we're talking about Final Destination 2 from 2003. But before we launch into this grisly sequel, I wanted to introduce our guest. He's a TV writer, college friend of mine, and most importantly, podcast host of one of my favorite podcasts out there, the FlopHouse. This is Mr. Dan McCoy.
Thank you. I hope our podcast would still rank if I didn't know you from school.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I also like that, like friend, podcaster. Yes.
Yeah. Totally. Well, I mean, y'all have been doing it for 15 years, I believe now at this point.
It's true. We've been doing it long enough that like occasionally someone knows who I am, which is a real thrill.
Nice. Yeah, I think I've been listening to about 12 to 13 years. So, but not since the absolute beginning. But I think everybody was just figuring out what a podcast was about then. It was an early adopter. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. No, I I ascribe about half of our success to how early we got in the game.
Yeah, I was going to say 3 straight white dudes talking shit about movies. Yeah,
exactly. Now people would be angry, and I understand why. I'm not like, but at the time we were like, we didn't think about it too deeply. We're like, what? This is what this is? I don't know.
Yeah,
this is
absolutely
how it works, I guess.
And look at you now on a podcast with great white dudes talking about movies.
Right. Absolutely.
Horror movies, no less.
Yeah. Dan, being a horror franchise podcast, you obviously have interest in horror franchises as a whole, but do you have a favorite one that you go back to most often?
Franchises. I mean, like, the thing is that most of them are wildly and widely varying in quality. Like, one of the reasons why I actually like the Final Destination series is I think that while there's perhaps a low ceiling, there's also a pretty high floor on them. Like, it's a consistent series.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of my favorite movies of all time is Aliens, and that obviously follows a horror masterpiece, Alien. And then everything else is pretty variable. Like, do the highs outweigh the lows? I don't know. Like, Child's Play is also like weirdly consistent, even though it takes some big swings in tone.
Yeah,
right. And I haven't even seen some of the later ones that have gotten pretty popular lately. So I'm kind of looking forward to diving into that entire series too.
Yeah, without jumping the gun, and I'm curious what's going to happen with this one. But one of the things I like about Child's Play is that they never go, no, we're rebooting everything. I mean, I know there was the remake, but like they're like, any weird choice that we've made, we're still going with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so I'm curious.
That's brave.
Yeah, this obviously is an escalation from the first one for Final Destination. I'm curious how they're going to keep going with it.
You guys just came off of Phantasm, which is like a series that for better and for worse, like, just keeps pushing that mythology forward. That's kind of what I admire about it, even though, you know, like, there's some diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Had you seen Ravager, Dan?
I just recently watched Ravager, and I know that, like, for a very late wrap up of the series that was not directed by Don Coscarelli, I liked it a fair amount.
There's stuff to like in there.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad it got made.
Yes. So do you have a particular history with Final Destination, or is it just like, you know, one that stuck out to you, or do you have like fond memories of the theater or anything like that?
I think that. Well, I think I saw the first 2 in the theater. I can't remember about number 3, although I did like I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, introduce a screening of it at the local Alamo Draft House. I think that 3 is probably the high point of the series. Again, you really know what you're going to get with this series, because to some degree they're all just remakes of the same thing. Like, they don't really try and push the mythology forward. They're just like, okay, now here's a bunch of other weird ways you could die. And I think the reason why I wanted to talk about this one was I do think that this is actually the biggest sort of change in tone. Like, for me, I mean, I haven't run the series, maybe you guys will come to a different conclusion actually seeing them all close together. But for me, I always sort of felt like the first one was fun, but sort of kind of glum and simple compared to how Baroque everything got. And then like this starts to set the tone of like, okay, we're going to take what worked from the first one, which was the wild ways that people died, especially towards the end of the movie when things got crazier, and then we're gonna add in a lot more sense of humor to that, and that's kind of the template going forward.
Yeah, it's hard not to interject a certain amount of humor into these type of films, because if you just like, if your whole basis is walking into a room and seeing a whole bunch of stuff that's going to kill you, like, come on, like I want to see the close-ups of every little thing.
Well, not to jump ahead, but that's one of the reasons why I like the third one is I feel like that one really gets that gag the best, where Mary Elizabeth Winstead walks into a gym at one point and like just like looks around and there's like 12 different things that could be the thing that kills this guy, and she's freaking out because she's like, oh, what is it? And then there's an unexpected punchline to the scene, and I just love that. It really feels at a certain point like a Simpsons joke of so many things could kill you in this room.
Well, that's I was not expecting to laugh as much as I did during this.
Yeah,
but I did. And like, it felt intentional. And even the stuff I'm like, I don't know that I should be laughing about that. It felt like the movie would have been okay with that.
Sure.
The whole thing's just ridiculous. So
I always love an overly descriptive reason why a movie is rated what it is. You know, my favorite of all time being rear nudity. But but this one started off with rated R for gruesome accidents. And I'm just like, I'd like to know if there's any other film that was ever rated R for gruesome accidents. But I think you could also just call Final Destination just gruesome accidents 1 through 5. You know,
we do trivia at the Nighthawk Cinema here in Brooklyn sometimes, and there was a recent round where it was all those warnings, like what they have along with the ratings, and like you just had to figure out what the movie was from them. And I wish I could remember them, but we did fairly well. It was amazing how much you can put the pieces together of like, okay, what movie is this?
Yeah, it's highly specific.
I still like the ones, I think it's Star Trek, The Next Generation, maybe. It's one of those like on Netflix where like one of the things is fear.
Yeah.
It's rated PG-13 for fear.
Yeah, it's all the Star Trek The Next Generation on Netflix. Their ratings are something for sex, fear. And I'm like, not that there's ever that much sex in Star Trek, but yeah, sex and fear.
Isn't that the human condition?
Right, exactly.
Sex and fear.
At least for the nerds who watch Star Trek. Yeah, so the man who is bringing us gruesome accidents, I had forgotten this until I looked it up, but the director is David R. Ellis, who was the director of Snakes on a Plane.
Yeah, a movie that everyone decided was funny as a meme, and then the studio thought, oh, people are going to come to see this because of that. And then no one did. It was an early example of the Morbius effect. But unlike Morbius, like I like Snakes on a Plane. It is dumb. It knows exactly what it is, though. Before there were such things as Alamo Draft Houses, you had to sneak your booze into the theater.
Yes.
And, I remember going to see that with Elliot, my co-host. I think it was Elliot. I don't know. We had some gin, or I did. I don't think Elliot did, and it was a delight. I think I'm thinking of Rambo. Rambo, the one where he's just like blowing people apart with the highest powered gun.
Yeah, where he's just standing there. Yeah.
Snakes on a Plane is one of my favorite movie going experiences because everyone there knew what they were there for.
Yeah.
And so everyone was just like talking and cracking wise, whatever, but everyone had fun at the movie and it was great. So I wasn't too surprised to learn this was the same guy.
Right.
Yeah. And he did Cellular, which is, a moderately okay little thriller. And he comes back to the series for The Final Destination, which I think is probably the worst one, unfortunately.
Oh, interesting.
My ranking.
Sure. Yeah, he's also he came from the world of stunts too, which is obviously very useful for a Final Destination film.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
But this one opens up with a fun recap of the first movie. A newscaster going over, I think they're just calling it the 1 year anniversary of it, and bleeding right into a guest on a talk show, which completely lays out the whole causing a rift in Death's design, which I remember thinking is so dumb to see on television. And then, not to make it dumb, like Bill Maher joke or something like that, but like this was weird back then, but maybe not so much now. Like if I saw somebody ranting on MSNBC about this, I would be kind of like, that seems like what the news is right now.
But it also seemed like it might be like a local sort of talk show,
Oh yeah.
She's like sleeping through it. So it's kind of this late night. Let's get this crank on to talk about his
that's true.
ideas. I simultaneously thought like, boy, this is, the most obvious exposition, and thought like, well, with such a premise like this is kind of elegant, actually.
Yeah.
Well, and I like, because I had the same reaction. I'm like, is this Art Bell Coast to Coast or something? And it made me think of there's that internet, like the viral video from years ago about the people seeing a leprechaun, whether or not there's a leprechaun. There's a news report about that. And they introduced one guy they're interviewing as this guy. They never introduced who this crackpot is. They're just like, well, we just had on local goofball to just spit some nonsense.
Local goofball. I want that to be my Chiron. He does have the funny line, and I didn't want to think too hard about this because you'll just go around in circles forever. But he says,
and in order to survive, the only way to survive is to look beneath the visible world. Because in the end, no one can escape death.
I'm like, well, you just said the only way to survive, but no one can escape death. So which is it here, buddy?
Yeah. The fact that death is the bad guy in these movies is kind of brilliant, I think, because as goofy as the movies get, that's the one like element that still makes it hard for me to shake them off. Like as horror, like I'm not scared by them at all, but like I do feel this like discomfort, and because the movie's all about like, you're not going to be able to avoid this. It's coming for you eventually. You avoid it today, it's going to get you tomorrow. Like that's the whole thing. I mean, like Audrey was talking about it while I was watching, and she like came in. She's like, what's kind of smart about this is like, what if we took Jason out of Friday the 13th?
Yeah.
When there was no Jason, it was just death.
but then you add on top of that the whole idea of the premonitions and people just helping someone, because these movies just teach me like never help anybody.
Yes.
Like never get them out of an in danger situation, because you're just going to make it worse for everybody around you. So like, do you not help an old lady cross the street? Do you just like allow her to get plowed over by traffic because that's death's design? Like, I don't know.
Should you help? Should you kick her into the street?
Should you help anybody? Yes. Right. But then we establish basically like two of our early female characters next up, and it gives you a little bit of a curveball here, because it's kind of establishing a final girl trope out the top, because the blonde girl is like the fun time sexy gal, and then our main character is the more like chaste sensible one. It had been a while since I had seen this one, and I couldn't remember what was coming up here soon. And I was just like, okay, yes, here's our final girl, and here's our sex pot friend here.
Well, the sex pot friend was dispatched so quickly, not to jump ahead, but like there's so much chaos in the big accident scene that I found myself, my attention was sort of split, and later on in the movie I was like, whatever happened to her friends? I'm like, oh right, they all died in that accident, even though she prevented the rest of the accident. Like I that didn't sink in the first time for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. We do get into the inciting incident of this one, which I think this sequence is so fantastic, and I think about it almost every time I'm on a highway, and especially if I'm behind a giant logging truck.
Yeah.
This one just really has stuck with me over the years. It's essentially, instead of a plane blowing up in the first one, it's the straps on a logging truck become unmoored and just start taking out car after car after car, which obviously makes them, each car, take out other cars, along with, lit cigarettes getting tossed onto dry leaves. Maybe that'll do something, water bottles under brake pedals. Like, I love how they film these lead up type of hits.
I remember at the time, like, even reviews that maybe didn't like this movie, like, you know how it is as a horror movie fan. You have to read between the lines of bad reviews. You'll be like, okay, this reviewer doesn't like it. I think it's probably because reviewers don't like horror movies. This sounds like I might like it, but even the bad reviews at the time were like, this is an amazing opening with the truck.
Because it's not even just cars just flipping all over the place. It's also they personalize it, like you said, with the water bottle getting stuck under the brake pedal, or the guy when Eugene wrecks his bike and then the bike comes flying at him and crushes him against the logs. Just a lot of unexpected brutality during that scene, and it hooked me immediately. Yeah,
the first log that rams its way right through the cop car.
Yes,
that was marvelous. Just this movie does a really good job of, and we saw it in the bus wreck in the first one, but they do a really good job of just like when there's a high impact moment, it's not just that the body gets thrown out of screen. There's gore and slop that just gets shot around the screen in addition to the impact violence.
Well, I mean, especially coming off the first one where the big inciting thing was an explosion. Like it killed a bunch of people, but it was like even in his premonition, it was just like, oh, people are scared, and then boom, 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 boom. This one was just so protracted. It made me excited for the rest of the movie. Because I'm like, if they just push down the pedal, they didn't have a water bottle under it and gunned it now, like this is going to be amazing.
Well, that's also so much better for the premise, because if you draw out the first accident, it makes it so much clearer for the rest of the movie, where it's like, okay, this person died first, this person died in this way. Like, if you give those moments rather than like, okay, I don't know what order were they sucked out of the plane. It's more effective for the setup.
So all of this, just like in the first one, our main character, Kimberly Corman, because of course we have to have horror director names in these films. Kimberly Corman, she has the premonition, just like our hero of the first film, and she stops a bunch of traffic onto the on-ramp, flips out. She's able to save her friends for a while. But then, in kind of a little bit of a twist, a truck just ends up ramming through her friend's car as she's standing on the outside of it, thus taking out all of our characters who we thought were going to be like our campers and our teens for the movies. Yeah.
But meanwhile, you meet all the other people who are stuck behind her on the on-ramp, which was, I was actually, knowing how formulaic these movies are, but having not seen this particular one for a while, I was like, now, how do they all know each other? Like, how do they find each other later? Because they're in the cars, like they're in separate cars. And then I was like, oh, right. She stops them on the on-ramp, and then they all come out and they're like, why are we stopped? And like, that's how everyone gets set up.
Yeah. And it's led by, I just kept calling him in my notes, like Hot Cop, because he's given the semi-dreamy eyes to her and back. Through this first...
He's creepy. Watch that again. When he's talking to another human, he does not blink.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And then during this, they reiterate that it's like a year to the day of the anniversary of the flight.
Which I was kind of surprised that because like it just off the dome, the easiest thing to do would be like, oh, well, someone tries to prevent Devon Sawa's death from the first one or something, or somehow Devon Sawa gets killed, and then it goes to the next person or something. Yeah. But they just went, no, he's already dead. This is going to be a whole new thing.
Yeah. I think I read that they did sort of look into whether he was interested, and he wasn't, or he wasn't available or whatever. So they went down the line to Ali Larter, who I like better than Devon Sawa anyway.
Yeah, evidently there was conflicting reports of like he wanted more money for the sequel versus no, it was a creative decision and all that kind of thing. So at first the writers were trying to decide how they wanted to kill him off screen, and there was the suggestion of a flesh-eating virus for some reason. But I think they went with like got hit by a brick.
Yes, and that, I mean, not to jump ahead, but that killed me. I was rolling just because like you have all these crazy stuff, but hit by brick.
Yep.
Like that's how they did him.
That's amazing. How they took him out.
I think both flesh-eating virus and hit by brick are choices, or like potential choice in one case, but choices that like make me think that yes, he did want more money.
I think
both
so.
of those sound like fuck you, Devon Sawa.
Exactly. Yes.
You either died horribly or by the dumbest thing possible.
Exactly. Yeah. But it is mentioned that Clear is in a padded room in an institution. So we get to our first prolonged set piece with the one of the guys that on the on-ramp. He's just won the lottery, so he's bringing home a stack of new toys that he just bought, and manages to step on everything in the hallway on his way to his apartment. And in very Final Destination setup, he gets in and his bad luck just starts with every single thing in the apartment becoming a death dealing device.
Yeah.
Whether it be cheese sticks or canola oil or magnets or rings in the sink.
Yeah, he was already in trouble because he won the lottery, but he avoided this horrible crash. And he gets home and he's bought a bunch of stuff, including a fancy watch and a horseshoe, like diamond horseshoe ring. Already just blowing all his money. He's going to blow the rest of it following Power Man 5000 on tour. And he's getting these phone calls from girls that are now interested in him because he has money. And then he decides to do some shirtless cooking.
Yeah.
For some reason, that goes wrong.
I kept thinking you're just going to get grease on you. You're going to get hot grease on that chest.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem smart.
Well, he gets his huge ring caught, it falls into the disposal, and then he gets his arm gets caught because he's got the watch while a grease fire starts. And I just gotta ask, is there anyone who has a disposal who has actually put their hand down there like it happens in movies for suspense reasons? Because why would you ever? I mean, Jim looks like maybe he's going to say that he's done it.
I did it once, and I did look directly, I turned on and off the switch just to make for damn sure that it was actually off. And I did stick my hand down there to get something one time, but I was terrified while I was doing it because I watched too many movies.
Yeah, I've done it more than I would like to talk about.
Wow. Okay, well, my theory is incorrect. People do it in real life.
Yeah, so if you just want to lower your intelligence for the rest of this podcast, that's what you're dealing with. But the whole time I'm also, because I guess it's supposed to be his watch is caught, but the whole time in my head I'm just drop the ring. It's just he won't let go of the ring. It's when Homer gets his arm caught in the vending machine.
Exactly.
It's just let it go, man.
Get it from the other end.
Yeah, he gets his hand out, and by this point his entire apartment has caught fire and actually explodes as he jumps out to the fire escape, gets down to the bottom of the fire escape, slips on some noodles that he just callously tossed out the window before, because this is pretty poetic, lands on his back, in which case the fire escape ladder just smashes right into his skull.
It's amazing. His head is made out of watermelon rind.
Yeah.
Because it just it goes down a little bit, stops, woof, woof, and then crushes it, and it just explodes.
Yeah. Now, Dan, you live in New York. Is your fire escape safe, or would you not trust it to this kind of situation?
We don't have one, but we're just on this. We're renting someone's condo currently, and it's one of those buildings where it's just 3 levels, and we're on the second floor. Okay. I think that probably
you could just dive out the window.
The assumption is I could just drop down if I needed to.
Yeah. Right. We cut to the hot cop. Basically, it seems like he's on goregallery.com right now from the late 90s on the internet, just rotten.com, just looking at how all the other kids from the flight in the previous film died, and it's just these extremely graphic photos of, I guess, the crime scenes. So he's starting to put together ooh, all these kids died too.
Well, what I like is because the main character Kimberly has already started talking about how she had a premonition, and they already brought in everyone after the fact, to talk about it. So you get introduced to the characters there. But so he's looking up that, all this stuff happened, and there were these weird coincidences. And then he just Googles or asks Jeeves or whatever they were using, premonition. That was going to get himself back.
There was less stuff on the internet back then.
Yes. My all-time favorite example of that in a movie of someone Googling something. There's a children's book series that I loved called The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper. And there's a terrible movie adaptation of it, and a guy Googles The Dark one time.
Oh, what's the storm front?
Yes. And in the children's fantasy series, it's malevolent dark forces coming, but you just Google The Dark.
Did you want alone? Are you alone in the dark recap?
Right? Yes. So the word starts to spread on the news that Lewis, the lotto winner, has died in this freak accident. And people start seeing it on the television. And I believe it bleeds over into a mom and a kid from the on-ramp. She puts this kid down and just says, off to the dentist. Think it'll be a routine exam here, guys? You know, like, again, this movie knowing exactly what it is, just saying, like, we're going to plant the idea in your head for the next sequence, the dentist office, you know, what can go wrong? At which point he starts seeing shadows on the ceiling from a tree with like skeletal hands clutching at him, which is kind of fun.
This dentist is maybe not the most responsible from his behavior in this. Yeah, like as things get rolling, I mean, we'll get into it, but he like leaves this kid with the nitrous on, and there's no one else in the room.
Yeah, this movie has a very grim view of the American healthcare system. Yes. Be it dentistry, mental health, just general hospital. Like, no thanks.
Yeah, and just before we get to the dentist, Kimberly ends up tracking down Clear, and there is kind of an amusing bit where the attendant that's leading Kimberly down to see Clear rattles off all the stuff that she's not allowed to bring into the room with her, which is basically like absolutely nothing.
Including poisons. Like if you have poisons on you, don't bring them in here.
Don't bring poisons in. But it is kind of clever where she's just like, no, she's here voluntarily in a padded cell. She just doesn't want anything around her because she thinks she's, you know, escaping death.
Well, I also like you talk about there being less stuff on the internet because there's a sequence of her like looking up Clear and seeing that she's still alive and finding out where she's at. And then you get her like looking up her route on MapQuest.
Right.
And it was like, did MapQuest like give money to this? Why? Because now it's just like, whatever. We know how she got there. She just
exactly.
Googled it. I was like, look what you can do on the computer.
Right. 2003.
Yeah.
And Clear does fill Kimberly in on the whole Death's original design, you know, the rules and all that kind of stuff.
I was supposed to die in that crash with my friends, so you're telling me that I'm next?
You said that someone else died last night. That means someone must have intervened.
Officer Burke pulled me away from the crash to kill my friends.
Congratulations. You'll be the last to go. But don't worry. Once the others are dead, it'll come back for you. It always does.
This was kind of like Friday the 13th, part 5, I think, when Tommy was able to bring all the masks with him, where it's like, well, Clear checked herself into this mental institution to protect herself from death. And they just went, yeah, that's okay. Hey, here's a cork board where you can obsess over this stuff. Because we think that's probably helpful.
Right.
Because she has like this cork board of just like stuff circled and she knows everything that's going on. She knows about the accident.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also, like, so she says you die in the order that you were supposed to die. But then later on, they say something about it being like reversed? I didn't really.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, they figured out it's reversed because I think those people were supposed to have died, but because the ripples made them not die. Yeah, I don't fully understand it, but.
Okay, so it wasn't reversed for everyone, because if it was, our hero would be the first to die, right? Like, it's just
you would think so.
Some people got reversed. I mean, like, this is the thing about Final Destination is, like, it does... I say it doesn't push the mythology forward, but I feel like in every one of these, there's, like, some... thing that they throw in that is just like, oh, the rules are just Calvin Ball.
Well, there's a lot of leaping to conclusions, because essentially what happens is you have Kimberly goes to get the scoop from an insane woman who then leaves the nut house to go like, you know what we should do? We should talk to a creepy guy in a basement. He'll tell us what's going on. And then they all go, well, probably what he said is right. And you're just supposed to accept that as fact.
Yeah.
And so, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. That's fine.
Sure.
Tony Todd's character, this mortician, undertaker, whatever he was in the first, like, he, it's never clear what his deal is. And it's just like, well, I guess he's around death a lot, so we got to take his word for it.
Yeah. I mean, if someone with that much presence told me anything, I would probably believe them. You know, because he's got so much charisma and presence that, like, yeah, that makes sense. I'll buy it.
Yeah.
But I just like that there's no investigation into him. Like, they bother to go see him and be like, how would you know this stuff? They're like, no, look, he knows this. Whatever.
He's just a creepy guy.
Yeah.
that I've met with before, you know?
Yeah.
He's my creepy friend.
We cut back to the boy in the dentist's office, and it begins again with the whole a close up on a wall outlet. I believe. Is it a fish tank that springs a leak or something like that?
Yeah,
starts
like a filter springs a leak and starts dripping down the wall towards the outlet, which is somewhat exposed, like the thing's not all the way plugged in.
Yeah. It starts sparking.
These movies really rely on a whole lot of the whole water meeting electricity. And, I'm not saying that kind of stuff doesn't happen, but I don't know. Never happened to me before.
Yeah, it's pretty anti-liquid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You see the crane outside with big panes of glass. So, also the funny thing, pigeons start hitting the window, and the dentist is sort of annoyed by this, but I don't know, he seems not as annoyed as he should, given the number of pigeons that he's oh, this is happening again. Oh, this happens all the time. Right. And then but it's 3 pigeons breaking the window.
Yeah. It's the end of the dark half is happening. He's like, oh man.
Damn, pigeons. How many times am I going to have to replace those goddamn windows?
Is it an old, folktale type of thing? If the bird gets loose on the inside of your house, then there will be a death inside that house or something like that. I'm not sure if that was their intent, but I know that that's an old, thing. So be careful if a bird ever gets inside your house.
Yeah, my cat's bringing birds.
Well, there you go.
Oh, man. Yep. I got to stop sticking my hand in the garbage disposal.
Right. So, yeah, evidently a bunch of pigeons start flying around inside the waiting room as well, where the mom is. And then this is kind of a weird cut, because after the kid gets almost gassed to death by the laughing gas or whatever, it just sort of cuts to him walking out and just being well, that procedure sure is done. And so it is kind of a fun bait and switch of nothing really happens to him in the dentist chair.
Yeah. It's great. And then the next thing that happens is so dumb in a beautiful way, where they're they had this premonition that the pigeons are somehow involved, and they're running at him yelling, the pigeons, and the kids immediately what? There's a big crowd of pigeons. I gotta run at them and make them fly. These people are probably telling me to run at these pigeons.
Stay away from the pigeons.
Well, that happens a couple of times in this, where they're they try to save, particularly the cop, tries to save people, and it makes it worse. With this and the hook, they're they cause it to happen, but they're what an accident.
Well, again, don't help anybody.
Yeah.
Running and scaring the pigeons makes the operator of a crane somehow just drop a giant plane of glass right on top of the kid. And it's such a good effect.
On top of the kid and in front of his mom. His mom is just watching this. He splats.
Yep.
Yeah. It just collapses him into meatloaf. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Again, the dedication of this film to the high impact stuff being really goopy as well. Yeah. Then this is where they go see Tony Todd, and he says,
only new life can defeat death.
What the hell does that mean?
Some people say there's a balance to everything. For every life, there's a death. For every death, there is a life. But the introduction of life that was not meant to be, that could invalidate the list. Force death to start anew.
And I think that this was a scrapped idea from the first one. Because she was supposedly going to have a child, and that just didn't work for the end of that film because it just seemed too serious, really. And at first, I was so confused on what they meant by life that was not meant to be. But I guess it's just if someone does escape death and has a kid, then that kid is outside of the death stream or the time stream or something like that.
Well, but also, spoiler alert, that's not what it's referring to ultimately. But then the thing that it is ultimately referring to, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but that just seems like another escape from death.
Yeah.
So I guess this is a double reverse. If you escape from death twice, death's you fooled me.
Yeah. We'll call it a mulligan.
You did it. You used a double negative, so I can't do anything.
Exactly.
Because Ali Larter has voluntarily, because she voluntarily checked herself into the insane asylum. She voluntarily checked herself out. One final job. She's out of retirement.
Right. Yeah.
And so, she takes them to see Tony Todd. And I like that he's where he's working, the corpse freezer has a rave going on inside of it. There's this red light.
Yeah.
It's great. Oh, they downgraded him from suit to jumpsuit.
Oh, yeah. He was wearing a suit last time, wasn't he?
Oh, whatever. It's Tony Todd. He looks good in anything.
Exactly. Kimmy has another premonition, but this time it's the car at the bottom of a lake. I just wrote, Claire looks around and sees basically everyone in a parking lot being clumsy. And this was another thing that I absolutely love about these movies, where it's just like nobody can walk and like carry anything, and everybody just like drops a propane tank, like gas squirts on the ground. You're like, what's gonna happen?
Well, I also like because here, like they're explaining to the cop basically what was told to them from Tony Todd. They're sussing it out, and the cop is just like, none of this makes any sense. This is all extremely stupid. And I like that the movie went that they had that guy, but not in an insulting way. Where they went like, no, we know this is stupid, so we're going to make fun of ourselves. They just went, no, it's fine that you don't believe this because it is ridiculous. But it's more just about how they believe it. Yeah, because what they figure out that, no, there was a pregnant woman. I remember seeing a pregnant woman. We have to make sure that she has her baby.
Yeah.
And so they get the cop. Well, my favorite part of this is so they get the cop to like figure out what car she's in. And she was in a white van, and they do the whole like computer enhance to find her license plate. Yeah. And the driver's license photo they have for this actress is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just a great driver's license photo, like very unflattering and terrible. Whereas earlier we see this news photo of Allie Larder, and of course she's perfect and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I laughed a lot at that driver's license photo.
The cop decides that he needs to have everybody at his apartment for a meeting so that they can all talk about it. And my God, this cop's apartment is amazing. It's huge. And does this take place in New York? I don't get the impression that it's New York City, but like it's upstate New York or something like that.
I don't know. I got no idea.
Because there's it's close enough to talk about it, and like that they're hearing about it on the radio, and that Clear is in a institution nearby. So my guess is it's and then like when we find out later how connected everyone is, it's somehow in the area.
Yeah.
The tri-county of death.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's local to wherever the first one. I guess they're coming from JFK.
Yeah,
so.
there you go.
Yeah.
New York area.
It's a town called the local area.
Right. Yeah. So in the cop's apartment, I do love this because they start coming around to this idea that people are going to start to get picked over. But the guy, what's his name, who rode the motorcycle? Eugene. So this was funny to me because he's the one who tells the story early on in the movie about how like death catches up to you all that. In this scene, he's just completely skeptical of everything. For some reason, it's just like he's done a 180 since his first scene. He's like, what, you mean death is stalking us? No way. Like I live my own life. So it's like he liked the story early on, but when it's applied to him, he wants nothing of it and doesn't buy it.
It is wild the way that I feel like screenwriters sometimes forget like what their own characters like the characters they're writing personalities are. Because I like this is a weird digression, but I was watching Star Trek last night, the original series. I have a group of friends that during the pandemic have been like running various TV shows of the past, and we're on that. And there's an episode where it's the first season where there's someone at a penal colony who escapes, and like the whole point is they're doing horrible things at this penal colony, and he stows away on the Enterprise. And initially Kirk, when he hears the ravings of this guy, is like, I don't want to look into it. like he's like, the guy who runs that I've seen the prisons, they're beautiful. Like he's revolutionized prison. Like this guy's great. Like I don't want to look into it. And Dr. McCoy's like, there's something about this guy that I believe. And he sends this woman with Kirk down to sort of, I guess, his proxy while they're looking around, making sure that it happens. And then as soon as they get on the planet, like Kirk's the one who's like, there's something up here. And the woman's like, I don't know. This guy seems nuts. And I'm like, what happened here? Did Shatner just decide like I can't have the woman be the right one? Or what's going on?
As soon as we're on the planet, I have to take charge and be the leader.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's just a boss move of him being like, you know what? This is my idea.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
It's just commentary.
Totally.
A workplace.
Yeah. So they start proofing around the apartment as a group, death proofing it essentially. There is a funny moment where the kind of drug-addled rocker guy, he decides he needs to put something in the closet, and like everything, he looks around, what's going to fall on me? Everything does fall on him, but you know, he doesn't get impaled by anything. It's just a regular closet that can like drop shit on you.
Yeah.
But I do like that with the exception of Eugene, everyone is pretty much on board with this.
Yes.
Like a cop invites you over and is like, look, we're all going to camp out at my place because you all might die. And they're like, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
And yeah, including the drug guy who they spend a lot of time making sure you don't like.
Yes.
And like letting you know what a piece of shit he is.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all, fortunately, all the survivors of this crash are relatively young and handsome people. But I wish there was like one 90-year-old guy with an oxygen tank. Like any one of us could be next. He's like, who do you think it is?
Right. Yeah. Who's death coming for today?
Could be any of us.
Yeah. So he does end up seeing a shadowy premonition of a man with hooks. And my God, I really do love this next bit because there's a guy literally walking down or he's just in the elevator with a cardboard box full of prosthetic arm hooks. Like,
yeah, just you know, throwing out all your old prosthetics.
Yeah.
You know, we all encounter that.
And he takes a big whiff of one of the ladies'
hair
in the movie's hair, like, and doesn't even try to. I mean, you shouldn't do it anyway. Don't get me wrong, but he doesn't try to hide it at all.
Mm-hmm. He just Joe Biden's the hell out of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the other guy's like, "What are you doing?"
Yep.
and he just, you know, recedes into the corner of the elevator.
Yep. I'm just a guy with hooks.
Nothing. Yeah, loves ladies' hair.
Nothing to see here but me and my hooks.
But then we get, because they've given them all phones to contact Kimberly just in case she has a premonition. And so she can call them and tell them like, oh, subway, get to a high rise. But Nora, the mother of the squished kid, is like, well, I don't care. My family's dead. I don't care. And then Eugene is kind of out too, but they're like, we'll take this phone to Nora anyway. And he does. And when they hear the hook hand thing, once again, they help cause her death because they call her like hook hand. And she's like, what? And, I think first she drops something to like pick up.
Yeah.
Or she drops the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And in bending down to pick it up, hooks her hair on one of the hooks. And then immediately freaks out because the hook hand and gets her head caught in the elevator.
And she gets decapitated with the elevator, and the man with the hook hands looks down at this like decapitated head with such horror, as you would. But the way it is shot, with like the fact that he had smelled her earlier, it plays like this like weird indictment of him, where it's like, you found her beautiful when she was alive. Well, look who's scared of her when she's just a head.
Just head and just only the hair.
Yeah.
How's that smell?
Got what you wanted.
Yeah, the elevator decapitation is pretty interesting. It's pretty well done.
Yeah, because it's not just that it pushes up and then that happens because the people at the bottom are trying to save her. But it's like the elevator really lunges at it a few times.
Yeah.
Really puts its back into it. And just, it's nasty.
And this isn't a criticism of the writing of this character necessarily, but she is kind of out to lunch at this point. And she's just like, you know, my husband's dead, my kid's dead. I don't have anything to go on. But the moment her life is in danger, she doesn't want to die. You know, she starts screaming, I don't want to die. But this all causes Eugene to freak out, and he grabs the cop's gun. And this is all very bizarre to me because whenever this comes up in a movie, and I guess it's not that often, but I feel like I've seen it before. He says, you know, he wants to commit suicide by going out on his own terms. So he immediately, instead of escaping death, he wants to like just do it to himself. He clicks the gun 6 times and the bullets just won't go off, which is kind of fun.
What's confusing to you?
Oh, just the idea that like, I guess he is completely resigned to dying at that point, but he was also skeptical earlier, but maybe I guess the elevator brought him around to it, and he's just like, I'm out.
I saw a guy smell some hair. That's it for me. I'm done.
Yeah. No, it is like, I buy the psychology of being like, I don't want to dread this forever. I want to do this my way. But you're right. The fact that he just only now started believing, like, it's not like he's been dreading it for a long time.
And his first thought is to go right to a gun to the head.
Do they still do the sideways gun thing in movies? Because when he started pointing the gun at them and he still had the sideways thing, I'm like, that's such like a late 90s, early 2000s thing to people do that.
Definitely. So everyone here has also, they've cheated death. They start going over the whole like outward ripple from the first movie. So everybody who is in this group of characters, they figure out is loosely tied to someone in the first movie. So because those people didn't die, they have also not died. And it's kind of convoluted, but I kind of liked it.
Like Eugene was supposed to have been stabbed by a student, but he ended up replacing Miss Luton in a different school because she died. And they'll find this out when they all pile into an SUV to go find Isabella, who's the pregnant woman.
Yes.
She has been, because they flagged her van, she has been picked up and is under arrest. But unbeknownst to them, she's gone into labor. And the chief from Battlestar Galactica, who's a cop in this, is driving her to the hospital in her van.
This is interesting because it means that like the initial accident was death tying up its loose ends. And I wonder, like, I sort of imagine death being like, oh man, like they escaped, like they're all in one place. I was going to just do it all. Yeah. And now I got to get them individually.
Right. It's just more shit I got to do from like Harry Dean Stanton. But of course, if you're driving down the highway in a Final Destination movie with a bunch of people in a van, a tire blows for completely no reason. And they go raking into a field, and a whole bunch of individual things almost kill them, which is, again, pretty fun, though.
Yeah.
Including a series of like PVC pipes that end up flying through the back of because they kind of do a skid like 180.
Right.
This is everyone. I still don't understand what happened to it. Was it the pipes that hit Eugene and kind of made it collapse as long, or was it just attacking the front seat and goes through the back of the headrest of the front seat and almost hits business Thora Birch?
Oh, yeah. I think the first one.
Business Thora Birch. Very good description. That's Keegan Connor Tracy, who I had a mild crush on from the short-lived show Jake 2.0. But she is totally Business Thora Birch.
Yes. In the aftermath of all of this chaos, a reporting van comes like screaming up to the scene. And of course, its fuel line gets punctured. And we see drips of gasoline.
Well, is it that car that almost hits the kid?
Yes, I think so, because the kid gets pulled out of the way. Correct. And they find out that Isabella is at Lakeview Hospital. And I think one of the earlier premonitions was, a vehicle at the bottom of a lake. So I think we're supposed to.
She starts seeing that. Yeah.
A guy pulls a medical technician pulls out the jaws of life, and he inadvertently makes the airbag go off, which stabs Business Thora Birch, jerks her head back, and goes right through the PVC pipe, which is pretty great.
Yeah, that was a great surprise.
And that guy he's not being careful.
No.
Like, he's got to know that that's a possibility. Come on, the training is terrible for these EMTs.
Yeah. Well, and that, now I'm thinking about it differently, because when the cops first come and they're rescuing the other people, Clear is just shouting at them, like, make sure you avoid potholes, make sure that this, she's kind of EMT explaining to them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of annoying, but then seeing how that guy handled the jaws of life, it's like, no, apparently you got to hold these people's hand.
Yes. Yeah. Rory, the druggy guy, ends up getting trisected by barbed wire fence as Thora Birch's cigarette falls into the gas line, causes an explosion, makes a 2 posts with 3 lines of barbed wire come flying right towards the camera from behind him. And it trisects his body, which just slowly fall into pieces. Which
amazing.
That got a cheer in the theater, I remember, when I was there.
I can believe it. Yeah.
It's a great shot.
That guy sucks, but it's also really cool.
Yes.
Well, it's happened maybe too many times in horror now, but I the first few times I saw it, I love a good something like a wire slices someone and it takes a moment and they just slide into pieces.
Always a fan.
I do feel like I agree. I feel like I've seen that more and more lately, but I remember the first few times I was just like, "Oh, it's the delayed reaction."
It was in Resident Evil.
Resident Evil, that was my first. Yep.
All good stuff.
Eugene is in the hospital. He gets taken to the hospital. And this bit with Death trying to take out Eugene in the hospital, like I was reminded of The Exorcist, where Pazuzu says, that would be vulgar display of power a little bit, because Death is just full on like pulling out plugs from the wall, like pulling machines over, dripping water all over.
With this crap.
Yeah, he's just like, all right, I'm going all out and actually exerting my force on Eugene. But he in the end, he just unplugs his machine.
And as they're going to the hospital, they're having Kimberly drive for some reason. And Kimberly has this like dead zone premonition of a doctor named Kalargian.
Oh, yeah.
Could you have had a more ridiculous
Very
name? Like
specific
I was
name.
trying to figure out how to possibly pronounce it. She's like, oh, yeah, it's Kalargian.
Yeah.
I know it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Dr. Jamiroquai? What is this? that she believes is going to like euthanize Isabella. It's somehow going to prevent the baby from being born. So they got to rush to the hospital.
Yeah,
to see what's going
from
on.
here on out, for me, it gets kind of convoluted, but maybe we can step by step this a little bit. But like she thinks that, I think it's from her point of view, she thinks that Dr. Kalargian is strangling Isabella for some reason, or she's trying to kill,
even though every time she's had one of these premonitions, other than the first time, I guess, where she just says, let's not do that. Like she misinterprets it.
So, what's the conclusion that you jump to immediately? A doctor is trying to kill somebody,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm tired of babies.
Straight up murder.
She needs to rush off and save Isabella to make sure that the baby can be born. Yeah, they delivered the baby. Yay. Eugene is saved because the emergency battery goes on.
Which I also love because, what is Death doing? Does Death's fucking around? Does Death know that someone's watching? And it's as soon as the mistake is realized, it's like, no, just kidding. I'm not killing you yet.
Yeah. I wasn't really trying to kill Eugene.
Well, I also like that he's in the hospital and has all these machines making him breathe because he almost died in this accident while they left the news on describing the awful accident.
Yes.
Man, healthcare, man.
Yeah.
So,
he has to live through it again. So she has another premonition. So Clear decides to go check on Eugene real quick, but Death finally gets the upper hand because a spark causes all of the oxygen in the room to ignite, blowing up the entire room of the hospital, and kills not only Eugene, but Clear as well.
Yeah, see you later.
Kimberly makes this jump to realize that she has to die to save everyone. She sees her hands that are cut up. And this is, again, one of those, another leap that took me a second to kind of, catch up to, I admit.
Yeah.
But it's also, like Dan brings up a good point where it's like all your premonitions have ended in you causing someone's death. Why don't you just go, what if I just didn't do anything?
Yeah.
What if I just sat this one out? But nope, she just goes no, I need to kill myself.
Yeah. So she makes the jump to, I have to kill myself to save everyone. But again, I don't get the lot. So this is where we get to it wasn't the baby being born. It was the life that was meant to be.
This is the new life that was not,
so
never meant to be or whatever.
Yeah, so they take a while. It's a long walk to get around to the fact that she needs to be she's
a flatline
herself.
There
you go. Yeah, she needs to flatline herself. She needs to come back with the electrical paddles or whatever.
Yeah, it turns out it's Dr. Kalargian that saves her life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the paddles, and yes, she is the new life.
Sorry, Dr. Kalargian, for the libel.
Right, I apologize for all that shit that I was talking about you earlier.
Were the Kalargians in the original series, or did they not show up till Deep Space Nine?
Right, yeah. They're a medical society. At the time, they're killing people, though.
Yeah, no question. Prime directive.
Yeah. So I think they say that they've cut ahead for a little while after this bit, but they're having an everything's okay picnic, which you always love at the end.
With the people from the farm they're friends with now for some reason.
I don't know why.
That was so interesting. Yeah. So it's the farm where all the wrecks happen at the end of the climax of the movie. Well, the leading up to the climax of the film. Yeah. And they've just made friends with the farmers that like live in the field.
Remember all the bodies we left on your property? Let's celebrate that.
Right. And, somebody literally says things are getting back to normal, which is, always the line you want at the end of a horror film. And it's revealed that Brian, the kid, was almost hit by the news van. And this sets off a bell in Kimberly, of course, because, again, don't save anybody from anything.
Right. The idea is like he was supposed to die, but because he was saved by someone else who was also supposed to die, then he still has to die because that person shouldn't have been there to save him. Although the weird thing is, like, also the news reporter wouldn't have been there to kill him if not for any of this. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it does make for a fun end of the movie.
Yeah. This is a fantastic ending because, of course, they just look over and just as Kimberly is about to put this all together, inexplicably, the barbecue grill just blows up, just killing Brian.
They don't even show what it is; it's just in the distance. It's
great. The way it's framed is so perfect because this is the one time that they don't do the lead up. Like they didn't do like shots of like the propane tank or an errant match or something like that. It's just poof, poof in the back, and. A severed arm lands on Mom's plate.
It is. And cut to credits. Yeah. And I love this because this is not like, this is a genuine sort of blockbuster horror franchise of recent years. Like this is Hollywood horror movie making. And this is the kind of like, fuck you ending you usually get in a much like punkier, like grosser movie.
Agreed. Yeah. It's a more like cynical comedy ending. And I feel like of all the gags, of all the comedy type of stuff in this movie, this one's by far and away the most comedic. And they saved it for the absolute final one. Or the final shot, obviously.
Because in the first one, it's like the final like sign coming down to get him. It's like, oh, did they escape him or not? But this is like, no, this shit's funny. We're just going to do this. Blow up this child.
And that's it. That's Final Destination 2. I do really appreciate the long drawn out comedic tension stuff in this one that they just kind of went overboard on. That's, I think, my favorite part of this movie.
I think around that, like the middle towards the end a little bit, it spends a little bit of time spinning its wheels about really making sure you understand the premise, even though they explained it, as we said, in that first scene. But they kind of just keep going over like, no, Death's got a plan and we violate the plan. But other than that, this was a lot of fun.
I think that happens because they're like, okay, well, we got to add some wrinkles because otherwise it's just going to be like ticking down these deaths. But it does slow it a bit. I felt that dip as well, and I don't know what the solution is. Although I think later on they cared less about coming up with clever contrivances, and maybe it was a good choice. I don't
Certainly.
know.
Well, let's honor our dead real quick with the in memoriam. Shayna McClank, played by Sarah Carter, hit by truck. Dano Estevez, played by Alejandro Rey, hit by truck. Frankie Whitman, played by Sean Sippus, hit by the same truck. Evan Lewis, played by David Pataku, impaled through the eye by falling fire escape ladder. Tim Carpenter, played by James Kirk, crushed by a falling glass panel. Nora Carpenter, played by Linda Boyd, decapitated by an elevator. Kat Jennings, played by Keegan Connor Tracy, impaled through the head by a sharpened pipe when the airbag goes off. Rory Peters, played by Jonathan Cherry, trisected by a barbed wire fence. Eugene Dix, played by Terrence Carson, killed in oxygen tank explosion. Clear Rivers, played by Ali Larder, killed in oxygen tank explosion. Ryan Gibbons, played by Noel Fisher, blown up by a barbecue grill explosion. What was your favorite kill of the movie? I think for me, it's gonna be the airbag because it was so unexpected and sudden. even though that goes against like a lot of the build-up stuff that I really like out of it. But I just remember cackling when that happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or the glass.
Yeah, I'd have to go with, as far as like the whole protector thing, like I like the explosion at the end. That was great. But I mean, it's obvious, but the car crash at the beginning is just so wild. Yeah. It just does not stop. Mm-hmm. It's like living inside Michael Bay's brain. It was wonderful.
Yeah. I like the classic ones are sort of the classic Final Destination ones are both of the ones that are like big lead ups with a bunch of misdirects and stuff, like the guy getting the ladder through the eye, or the later one where the guy gets smooshed. But I think I also have to go with just like the first log that goes through the windshield and crushes the cop's head.
Yeah.
Like that is the image I think that is lodged in my head from this movie since when I first saw it. And I think it's the one that everyone really remembers. Like I feel like people still talk about this specific accident sequence in this movie.
Absolutely. Like this is like, I feel like that sequence lives on not just people who like horror movies, but just movies in general. Like it transcends just being like a horror movie sequence. And it's just like, no, that was actually really well shot and really well done.
Yeah. See, I didn't have the same experience at the end of this one, where when the first one ended, I had a lot more of the, oh my God, everything in my house could kill me. But I have not driven anywhere since seeing this. So that might change things. But I also haven't been to the dentist either.
Yeah, so. There you go.
It's the pandemic. So many of us haven't been to the dentist.
haven't been in an elevator. Haven't carried my hook hands around.
I've got so many prosthetics I got to get rid of.
Right. All right. Well, that's it. We're gonna keep on going next week with part 3. But until then, Dan, is there anything you want to plug before signing off?
Yeah, we talked about at the beginning, my podcast, which I do with my friend Elliot and my friend Stu. Stuart also went to Earlham with James and me. Elliot is also a television writer. He worked with me at The Daily Show. He did the Mystery Science Theater reboot, among other things. He's now on a Fox show called Housebroken. But we do a podcast about bad movies. It's called The FlopHouse. Even though it's about bad movies, we go in with an open mind. We try not to, we always hope that it might be good. And we're like, oh, wait, we kind of liked it. But it's still largely a comedy podcast, being silly about the dumb things that we watch.
Yeah. Yeah, I just listened to your Jupiter Ascending one, and it was a great episode, but I was so expecting, like, oh man, they're gonna go at this movie, and you were all very nice about it. It was a funny episode.
Thank you. This is the one thing that like keeps me sane, because like after 15 years of doing it, I'm like, was this a terrible thing to do? Like, were we just mean? Like, and I was like, no, we try and have like joy about
Absolutely.
This.
Yeah. I feel like we try to do that a little bit too, especially with shitty horror movies. You can just so easily go for the throat on it. But like, I don't know, like why spend all your time if you don't kind of love it, like deep down,
exactly.
And I just don't want to be like movies. Another like snark pile on, that the internet is so full of. But
although I did just start the Me You Madness podcast, and Jim and I have sat through that, and I'm like, how do you even?
That one's vile.
That one's
I have no problem calling that one vile.
Nutty movie.
Yeah, we have a bad movie night that started during the pandemic as well. And I knew it was going to be a rough one when not even 10 minutes into it, nobody was really making any jokes, because we were all just so stunned by how bad it was. And I was like, this is going to be a long 95 minutes or so.
Yep.
That's a nutty movie.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
It's funny. One of your recent episodes, it kind of like summarized everything for me, but I guess you noticed Stu's annoyance of another like digression, and you were like, people don't come for the movie review, they come for the bits here, so the bits is the entire thing.
Watch the movie, they'd watch the movie.
But yeah, everyone should check out The FlopHouse. Comes out Saturday mornings. Absolutely. It's how I do my Saturday morning chores. Basically like kind of giggling my way through that. And if I go out and go grocery shopping on a Saturday morning, like I often do, I'm often laughing in public, to myself, which is always a curious thing when you listen to a lot of comedy podcasts. But
Thank you.
absolutely. Give it a shot. And I suppose that's it. So you can find us on Instagram at This May Hurt a Bit Pod and Twitter on Hurt a Bit. And we will see you next time for Final Destination Part 3, the one that Dan calls the best in the series. We'll see.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. See you next week. This has been a Two Penguins media production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at This May Hurt a Bit Pod and on Twitter at Hurt a Bit. Email us at thismayhurtabit@gmail.com. And if you are so inclined, rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.